Hi everyone, this is a remote viewing 5-year forecast for 3 new cryptocurrencies that we are calling CECO 15, 16, and 17. As usual, all are currently inexpensive, despite having different projections. We have done a great many studies on new cryptocurrencies that we hoped would survive and thrive into the future, and in general, we have found that most of them do not do well in the long run in terms of adoption. We decided to look at cryptocurrencies this month that have some stuff in common, but fundamentally they perform differently over the 5-year duration of our forecast. CECO stands for Contemporary Investigations of Cryptocurrency Opportunities. Again, the purpose of our CECO forecasts is to attempt to use remote viewing in the context of our economic forecasting methods to determine the likelihood that a cryptocurrency will survive and thrive into the future. We are trying to focus on cryptocurrencies where their initial cost per coin is generally small and the potential for growth is significant. We offer our CECO forecasts free to the public to watch as videos on YouTube, but the real name of the currency in the forecast has been changed so that the name referenced in the video is fictional. Potential investors can watch the forecast to see if they want to purchase the actual identity of the currency during the forecast period. While we have begun our CECO forecast by publishing results for coins for which we obtained positive results, we now publish a wider range of forecasts. We have moved to something that is more like a subscription model, where those people who've purchased one of our CECO forecast identities also get the identities of all other CECO forecasts that are available and current through the end of the year 2021. There is no extra cost for this. CECO forecasts typically are for 5 or more years. We occasionally update the forecast, which usually extends the forecast further into the future. This allows us to share our results that are not so good, which theoretically allows people to dump currencies from their portfolios that look like they will not survive. But again, in our research, some currencies did come back with strong and positive results. Unfortunately, none of those currencies performed particularly well. But CECO 17 does have an interesting result that we think is worth mentioning. For these CECO studies, we normally probe for adoption, and that is whether a significant number of people and institutions start to use the currency. The theory is that if the currency survives and people use the currency, then it would make a good investment. So, let me outline what we did with this study for CECO 15, 16, and 17. This experimental design has 2 parts for the target, which is what the remote viewers are supposed to perceive. The first is known now, and that is a base surface that has unique topographical elements. The second part of the target is made up of additional elements that are added to the target at the end of the forecast period using CGI software. We have a video on our website on the Farsight forecasting method that was used for this study, and that video describes how this all works. All of the viewers describe the currently verifiable elements of the base surface for our target very well. We used multiple base targets, some of which were mountainous desert environments, glacier environments, as well as more flat and watery topography. Moreover, all of the viewers had similar or corresponding numbers of elements added to the base surface, and those results tell us how the currency will perform over the forecast period according to the rules of our experimental design. In our studies, there is a possibility of up to 11 elements that can be placed on the target using CGI software 5 years into the future, and our remote viewers are describing what the target looks like in 5 years, and it is all assembled using CGI software. The rules of how those elements are employed in the next target creation process exist now, and those rules are tied to how the currency performs during the forecast period. So when our viewers describe what the target looks like in the future, we know how the currency performs. For CECO 17, our 4 viewers describe the future target as having 4, 2, 5, and 4 additional elements out of 11 possible elements that are added to the base surface target. Normally, targets which have 3 or 4 elements are good indicators of positive growth. So, on the level of complexity analysis, this is a good sign for that currency. We also utilized an aggregated version of our temperature probe analysis for this CECO. Temperature probe analysis is normally used to obtain direction indicators for specific timelines, such as week to week, month to month, or year to year. The aggregation method helps centralize the timeline measurements so that we have one measure for the entire forecast period rather than week to week or year to year and so on. This tends to increase the accuracy of the temperature probe analysis, and it allows us to obtain an independent measure for the aggregate CECO change. We can then compare this with the measure obtained using complexity analysis. More specifically, there are 32 measures for temperature that were mapped to changes in adoption for this currency. Of the 32 measures for temperature, 15 are positive and 17 are negative. If you weigh these measures by the actual perceived temperatures, then the numbers are 30 positive and 30 negative. Thus, the aggregate temperature probe analysis seems to be a wash, with neither positive or negative winning. This normally means that there will be great volatility with the currency over the next 5 years. Looking more closely at the timing of the positive and negative periods, it seems like the big changes happen during years 2 and 3. More specifically, sometime during the second year, there is a steep drop in adoption. Then, as you move closer into the third year, there is a steep rise in adoption, and this rise may carry over a bit into the later part of year 3. So, personally, if I might invest in this currency, I would wait until the drop during the second year before purchasing, and then I would probably sell the currency at the 2.5-year mark. Certainly, I would not keep the currency beyond year 3. Again, that is just what I personally would do based on these results. Also, I would be cautious about holding CECO 17 now and simply wait for the steep dip during the second year before making any modest investment. Now, for a numerical comparison with respect to our other CECO projects, if we average the number of elements perceived by each viewer and divide that by the total possible elements for the target, we get a proportion of total possible elements that a viewer perceives. Then, we can average that proportion across all viewers to get an overall index for the currency that ranges from 0 to 1. An index number of 1 would mean that the viewers perceived every possible element that could be used in a forecast, and that would mean that the currency would be very popular and adopted by an exceptionally large community. An index number of 0 would mean the opposite, which is that the viewers perceived no additional elements over and above the base surface, which would mean that the currency would be expected to perform quite badly in terms of adoption. For our CECO 1 currency, that index number is 0.66. For our CECO 2 currency, that index number is 0.725. For our CECO 3 currency, that index number is 0.575. For CECO 4, that is 0.567. For CECO 6, that is 0.389. For CECO 9, that is 0.472. For CECO 14, that number is 0.35. And for CECO 17, that number is 0.392. When combined with the negative and positive indicators for temperature probe analysis in the middle of the forecast period, this indicates an interesting result for CECO 17 between now, mid-2021, and a little past the second and third quarter of the forecast, which ends in mid-2026. So our remote viewing results are positive for a certain period of time for the CECO 17 currency in terms of adoption. This does not guarantee that the currency will perform well over the next 5 years, but given that we now have multiple remote viewing sessions done by very experienced remote viewers that all indicate that the currency's future performance appears discernible at certain points during the forecast period, the results for CECO 17 are useful. One last point is this currency is relatively inexpensive currently. My own thoughts regarding what I might do with these results is that it is best to avoid the currency for the first quarter of the forecast period, and I might consider entering during the beginning of the second quarter and exit as the third quarter begins, or at least until I see a substantial return on my investment. Again, this is just what I would personally do based on these results for CECO 17. If you are wishing to do this also, remember that you are doing so at your own risk, and the data for CECO 17 are not strong throughout the entire forecast period. Also, this is not day trading where you buy in the morning and sell in the afternoon, and the exact timing of the upward and downward movements need to be known down to the minute or the hour. Remind yourself that this is a 5-year forecast. As mentioned briefly before, CECO 15 and 16 in comparison did not yield strong indicators of overall positive growth or a significant rise in adoption at any time during the forecast period. And remember, our disclaimer, no one at Farsight is a licensed financial advisor, so anything that anyone at Farsight does that relates to using remote viewing to predict financial or economic outcomes of any type, including their performance, however defined, or selling prices of cryptocurrencies, stocks, commodities, or anything else, is done for entertainment and educational purposes only. Everyone doing investments are doing so at their own risk. These are experiments in remote viewing, and there are no guarantees or warranties being made, either expressed or implied. Nonetheless, these efforts are truly interesting on a grand scale, and we at Farsight believe that after we do this for a while, it will be very hard for anyone to ignore the reality of remote viewing. As we have said in the past, may you follow your own intuitions, make wise investment decisions, and become rich. Thank you for supporting our efforts at Farsight. Together we will change the world for the better. I am Aziz Brown at Farsight.